I've got too many bills.
If you need funds, you can apply in minutes at cashnetusa.com and have the money in your account as soon as the same business day.
Okay, got it. Applying now.
They've been helping hardworking people cover emergency expenses since 2004.
Hey, look, I got it.
You've got this.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See cashnetusa.com for more details.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Peace, this is Yasin Bey, proud to present to you in this moment, appearing courtesy of the true and living Almighty Lord, the incomparable, the one and only, Brother Ali. Enjoy.
What's good, y'all? This is Breeze Brewing from the Mighty Juggernauts. And make sure you subscribe and download the podcast, Library Rap, the hip-hop interviews with Tim Einenkel. Hip-hop journalism on the highest level.
Yeah, what's up? It's your boy Joel Ortiz, and I want everybody to make sure that they subscribe and download the podcast, Library Rap, the hip-hop interviews with Tim Einenkel. Yo, Tim, I hope all is well. You my guy. I know these interviews are not interviews, they're actually conversations, and I appreciate them all. Yow.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ice-T. I want you to do something for me. Make sure you download and subscribe Library Rap, the hip-hop interviews with Tim Einenkel. All right, stop playing. Download and subscribe. Library Rap, the hip-hop interviews with Tim Einenkel. It's cold.
Forced to bear witness to some broad devilishness I cannot co-sign. Put in the sky for the servant leaders, earnest seekers and poor righteous urban teachers. The human being in the purest meaning, truth seeking, the proof is in the healing. Sujood to the Khalifa, the steward and the student and the ruler of the dunya that I brew the anesthesia.
One of the truest artists out there, host of the Travelers podcast with Brother Ali, and music for days and days and days and end. He just released his latest album, Satisfied Soul, with Ant of Atmosphere. He's Brother Ali, and I welcome him back to Library Rap, the hip-hop interviews with Tim Einenkel. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to talk to you again, man.
Cool, man. So I want to start, I just mentioned Ant, and him producing this album. You had him on your podcast, the Travelers podcast, as mentioned, and in your introduction to him, you say that he's the producer behind the music that most of us know you for. He helped you reach new heights and sounds and textures in your art. So, what is it about Ant as a producer that allowed you to achieve all this in your art?
I mean, it's a combination of the music that he makes, but that's a huge part of it. But that's the part that everybody can hear. So there's a lot of soul. For me, he does a lot of soul and gospel and blues, which he knows are going to bring out certain emotions in me. But so much of it that people can't or couldn't see until there was a podcast format is our relationship and like the way that he sees us as a people. And so, his relationship with me, when I say us, I mean the artists he works with, mostly me and Slug from Atmosphere. But he brings certain things out of us because he sees us in a way that nobody else does. And so we both, I think, make music that's a lot more just raw and complete. I think for me, I can say my music with him is a lot more complete than it is with anybody else. Like I'm more of myself with him than I am with anyone else.
You mentioned soul and gospel, and this is a question that I was going to ask you later because it pertains to one of the tracks on it, Satisfied Soul, and the track is the Deep Cuts. And that track kind of brought me back to one of my favorite tracks by you, which is Tightrope from your 2009 album, Us. Because it's very soulful and it has this like kind of bring us to church type track, very uplifting. And one of the things that really stands out about Deep Cuts is the children singing on the hook. When you heard that hook, what was that? What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, Ant does these like descending kind of progressions a lot, and that's one of them. Yeah, that was one of the earlier songs that we did on the album, and it was kind of like me having left Minneapolis, left the Rhymesayers label, and I went back there to work on music with Ant again. And so it was just this feeling that, like, life takes us all in different directions, but anybody that we've ever shared a loving relationship with, that love is always there. Even if we're not in the same roles, playing the same roles that we did in each other's lives. With me and Ant, we still do. I would say it's even grown. It only grew with me stepping away from the label and the country and the city and all that kind of stuff. But with a lot of the other people in Minneapolis and at the label and things like that, it's just kind of this feeling that, like, yeah, the love is right where you left it. It's not situational. And so that's the way that music made me feel, but it was also the fact that I had, like, just returned to Minnesota after all these years.
Spread your wings inside a cocoon, bust out the womb, even if you couldn't be you without them. Sometimes you couldn't become the next you around them, but love doesn't disintegrate. It doesn't mean that it was fake if it switches shade. The creator is the eternal, everlasting. Every other last thing in existence changed, but it's always love between us.
You mentioned you left Rhymesayers, and you've released music on Rhymesayers. You also released music independently, and now you're releasing this album on Mello Music. There's always the question people always ask, like, what's the power of the label? Like, what is the power of being on a label? What's the power of being independent? For this particular album, why kind of join teams with Mello Music?
So when Rhymesayers is kind of like the indie label that people want to be on, and there's a lot of good there, and there's a lot of strength there, and there's a lot of. Then me and my partner BK1, who was my first DJ, he's the one that actually introduced me to Rhymesayers. He and I do our own label together, the Travelers Media and Travelers Podcast. So we're partners in everything that I do now. And we released a few, like, micro releases. So, like, we put out this, like, self-produced project of like freestyle kind of things that I did. We put out, some other, like, smaller bodies of work where you sell 300 copies, 500 copies. Like, you go direct to your fans, you sell records, and those go great. Those are very simple. They're very clean. You make a decent amount of money, when you do it that way. And then we made this album called Love and Service with a producer called Unjust. And we wanted to release that like an actual album. Like, this is different. This is an album. And so we tried to do it independently. And we just realized there's so much that we don't know. There's so much that we don't, and so with Satisfied Soul, we wanted to make sure that it got heard. The album was completely done. Like, Mello Music didn't help us make the album. We recorded it completely we funded it completely on our own. When Mello got involved, there's other things that they started paying for. But I mean, we were done and we were ready to go with the album. But what I realized is there's something about the fact that a label has all of this, like, accumulated cachet. And so they have long-standing relationships with distributors and with press and with manufacturers. And, they've got all these relationships because of the sheer, like, quantity of music that they put out. Like, I think everybody's really looks to Alchemist right now. Because he started doing micro releases, like I mentioned earlier, but he did so many of them that he really is like a one-man record label in terms of his output. But just this sheer amount of music that he releases, him having produced it all, you know what I mean, is really incredible. And so it's a little bit different when you do that much. And I just think that, we realized that we felt like we made an album that all of our fans need to know exists. Like, we just need as many people as possible to know that this music is happening. And so we asked Mello to partner specifically with those parts. Like, help us with distribution, help us with some of the things that we might not realize about manufacturing and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a good partnership so far.
Is there stuff that you're kind of, I think you touched on it, but like making sure that you're learning from this process with Mello that you could take and go back more and do more stuff independently?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the goal. I think doing micro releases is a really important way to get to that place. Like when I look at how Rhymesayers developed, they started by doing that, releasing their own music, just directly to their fans. And then Rhymesayers had a physical store back in the day, and you could also order from their website and things like that, like selling them at shows and stuff. So they built up from doing tapes to then doing CDs to then doing vinyl to then doing, when my first album Shadows in the Sun came out, there was no distribution in place for that album. And but because they had already done so much, there's just a power in doing something over and over and over again. And the kind of like grooves that you dig into and the relationships you build and the habits and best practices that you form, there is a power to a label doing that over and over again.
The interview that you did with Ant for the podcast, you did it in a hotel room during your tour. You've been doing this for quite some time. What's the meaning, or how has the meaning behind the tour changed for you? I mean, is it still just as important, or is it more important, or is it less important?
Yeah, it's weird that the numbers have gone down a little bit. Like we still have very, very solid numbers. There was a very long stretch of time where we would do 50 cities and they would all be sold out or very close to it. Like every single room would be packed. There wasn't a room that we couldn't pack or sell out in every little city across the whole country. And now it's not like that. Now we go to the major cities, and we do very solid numbers, which is not the same as blowing them all out. I'm still very grateful for it. We still make a living doing it. But so the numbers aren't at what they used to be, but the connection and the depth of connection with the fans that are still with us, that have been with us for all these years, they've seen us in different phases and seasons of our life and creativity. Also now with me having a podcast, like the people that come to the shows have listened to me talk for hundreds of hours. Like they really, really know me and understand me and get me and, are connected to why we're all there. And so, yeah, so, to me, it's, I almost want to say I like it better, but, there's something to all that excitement of like the big numbers and the electric energy of newness, and the fans are youthful and stuff like that. Like there was something about that energy that was really cool. But I really like this phase a lot. Like I feel really grateful for this.
I think one thing I really enjoyed about the conversation you and Ann had, not just about the album, but also about, you guys talked about how your fans are aging, just like we all are, right? And your lyrical content is kind of aging, not aging, but it's developing as well. And you're not trying to. I remember a documentary that oh God, what was it called? But I remember Slug being in, and he's like, sometimes he's like, you're in your 20s, you have this I don't give a F attitude, right? And then when you get to your 40s, you have to be like, you actually have to give an F, right? You have to actually know what's going on because you have a family, or you have a career to support. For you, when did you start, I guess, more embracing, or when you first started noticing your fans were aging? What did that feel like? But then also, when did you start embracing it?
I think so. Last year, I did a tour with the Grouch, and all of Living Legends and me and Reverie, and I think that's when I first really started noticing it. And I think I'm noticing it too because I've really been focusing on health. And so and where I never did before, I was never athletic, I was never health centered. And for the last 4 years since I left America, I have been a lot more than before. And so I think I'm noticing it more because of the fact that I feel great and I feel like I want to come out here have a great show, and I'm moving and breathing better than I did before, and my, what I'm able to do vocally is better. I lost like 60 pounds, and so like I'm like, let's go, you know what I mean? And I'm looking out at a room full of people that are like, nah, man. And there's a part of me that's like, come on, you guys, like, I'm not done. Like, I'm inspired, and I want to still. And I'm just noticing that, it's just like I said, it's just a different energy.
Mm. In terms of the album, the name of the album is Satisfied Soul, and like when I was listening to it and obviously reading the kind of title over and over, I couldn't help but think of the song "Satisfy My Soul" by Bob Marley. What's the story behind the title of the album, and is it kind of an ode to Bob Marley?
Well, so the idea for me it was a couple of things. The first one is that, in Islamic spirituality, like there's different developments and stages of the soul, of our non-physical self. The first and lowest form of who we are is called the commanding self, which is really like the lower desires, the ego, the appetites. Like when we're a slave to those things, we just demand whatever we want. And we do whatever we can to just try to feed our desires. And so that's the lowest energy. People call it like low vibrational or whatever. Lowest common denominator between all people. And you see that people make music like that and just sell products like that in general. It's just like, a bunch of fat, bunch of sugar, sexual body parts. And you know what I mean? Like, you say like nobody ever went broke, underestimating the taste of the public, like if you go for the low hanging fruit, lowest common denominator, yes, everybody has those things in common. Even the most virtuous people also enjoy sugar, fat, boobs, you know what I'm saying? Like and then somewhere in between the lowest stage of the self and the realization of the self is the self-accusing soul, the self-accountable soul, the one that is seeking, that is accountable, that's reflective, that's meditative, that's really taking things into consideration. And that's where most of us are. But the end of our journey, or like the graduation, is the satisfied soul, where we, have disciplined the desires, where we've, learned what our truest selves are, and we live from that. And so that's the idea of the album is, not a claim, but to really seek that, And I feel like in making this album, like I did taste some of that. And, but then also there's this feeling of like, the like kind of nostalgic stuff of a sound that me and Ant have done before, along with this like new developed. So like, I've been living in Istanbul. You can hear the call for prayer in the background probably.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying like that's where I live now. This is 5 times a day, every single day. That's a human being about a 2-minute walk from my house.
Oh, wow.
Delivering the call for prayer. It's not a recording. There's 1,000 mosques in this area. In the greater Istanbul area, there's 3,000. Every single one of them has a live human being doing that 5 times a day. And so it's like, that's what my life's about now. And that's what's shaping and, informing what I'm doing now. But I'm still the same person from North Minneapolis that I was when me and Ant did Shadows on the Sun. So this combination of something very like developed and aspirational and grown and mature, but then also just the core essence of who we've always been at the same time. So there is something about Satisfied Soul that sounds like, it sounds like the kind of like soul music or kind of native tongue kind of stuff that me and Ant are informed by.
Oh, one of the many things I've always appreciated about your music is that you could tell it comes from you, from the heart, right? And you're always completely honest with your fans and your lyrics, and through conversations and stuff like that. And so I'm gonna ask you about a few tracks, but also about a few lyrics in those tracks. On the track "Drum," you spit, "My songs made my eyes moist just like yours." And when I heard that, I went back and I played it again, and I went back and played it again, and I went back and played it again. And it's just, it's like 5 or 6 words, right? Not many words, but just powerful lyrics to me, because it's showing that you're being completely honest with us in terms of how emotional you could get, even with your music. Can you just kind of talk about the writing process for this track and those words exactly?
Yeah, well, there's a number of songs on here that just, like, I really have, I think, a really developed appreciation for music and what it's done for me personally, what it's done for my relationships and friendships, what it's done for my spirituality, what it's done for and then also what it does for groups and what it's done for the world. Like, man, music is just a really powerful thing. And so it's one of the themes that I come back to several times on this album. That line in particular, I'm saying, like, man, I cry when I write these songs, so the fact that people relate to them, I really trust that. Even if me and these people, even if we don't come from the same walk of life or background, a lot of times I understand life very differently from my fans, because in the times that we were growing up with very different perspectives. But because of the fact that, like, I'm pouring my heart out when I make this music, I trust that the connection that people have to it is true. And so I love and trust and believe the people that listen to my music. And so yeah, I mean, it's a big deal to me. Like, these songs are, like, I literally sweat over them and fought for them and spent time away from my family for them. And I was in danger for them in a lot of different ways, political danger, legal danger, physical threat of violence sometimes, just the kind of sacrifice of traveling constantly, financially. When you're an artist, you're never really that secure financially, considering the fact that we master something. If I had mastered advertising or stocks or something, or real estate, the way that I mastered this, I should really be rich, and I'm
Right.
really not. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I feel rich because I do what I don't do anything other than what I love to do, and somehow there's dinner every day for my family. So that's rich. But if anybody put this much time into mastering something else, we would be titans of the industry. And we're not that, but it's like, this really comes from a very, very deep place of love and sacrifice.
Another lyric that I appreciate from the Counts. It's I make art and they call it a jam, and the real big reason why I appreciate that is it's one of my favorite lyrics. It reminds me of one of my favorite lyrics from DMX. And he spit on "Let Me Fly. I merely say what's in my heart, and you call it a style." And I think that kind of, when I first heard the DMX lyric, that was when I was like, this is what music is. This is kind of people speaking from the heart, and critics or whatever call it what it is, what they call it, and artists call it art. And that your lyric, I make art and they call it a jam, brought me back to that. What is the purpose of art to you, and when you first started, what did you want it to do, and how has that evolved to what it is doing for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been the same. I think it's always been, at its best, for me, it's a connection. It's a connection between me and other people based on the human experience. Um, it also serves for someone like me and a lot of artists. We want validation, and we want to feel accepted, and we want to feel loved. Like a lot of the people that, like I said, pour an unusual and maybe even at times unhealthy amount of energy into this, it's because we're desperately seeking something that we felt like we were starved of. If you find a lot of artists that are very sensitive people and that didn't feel embraced or loved or accepted or validated. And so when we get on the stage and do what we do, it's like undeniable. Like, I do have value. I do have something to say. I'm not worthless. I am somebody. And, and I'm going to give you all something beautiful. And that's what I get out of it, though, is like, I get out of it that, yes, I am fully human. And, so there's always been a lot of that in it for me. But I mean, at its best, I think it's really just something when it's very intimate and pure, it's like these are secrets that human beings have and don't usually, it's very difficult to convey or communicate those experiences. But there's something about the music that's able to convey what's almost impossible to say in words.
You're an artist that, and we've mentioned this, but you're an artist that is not afraid to make yourself vulnerable for your audience, and I think that's probably what's one of the many things that we all love about you as a person and as an artist. And you really do that well in the track Head, Heart, Hands. Can you kind of talk about how this track came together, and also why do you allow yourself to be vulnerable with your fans?
Well, the vulnerability part is first and foremost just me trying to make dope music. Like, that's one way that I know to make the music dope, like undeniably dope. Like, if there's something very human in there, it's kind of like, it's not even fair. Like, if you put those things that are like so deep, if they show up in the music, then unless somebody is cut off from their own emotions, they're going to feel it, and it's going to allow us to connect, and the connection is going to be really sincere. Also, I'm trying to connect with Ant, so that's the reason that I do that. And then also there's a personal reason for it too, just that all of the things that I go through, I get to have the final word on them. Like, they don't ever, even my challenges, difficulties, nightmares, they don't have the final word. I get to make a song. I get to make a dope song. So the worst nightmare that happens to me, I can make a dope song about it. And then that song is how that's what I have. And I can play that song whenever I want to. I can perform it. Somebody will sing along with me. It turns everything into something valuable. So, that's that. Though that particular song is just about trying to be a completely good person on all the three levels. And again, that's getting back to, in Islam, there was a story of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that this person came to him and asked him, what is Iman? Like, what is it to have faith? And so the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave all of the different articles of faith that we believe in as Muslims. And we say, well, that's, dealing with the head. Like, what do we believe in? And then he said, what is Islam? Like, what is it to submit? What is it to practice? And so the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave him like all of the articles or the pillars of the actual practice of Islam. So praying and fasting and charity and going on Hajj and things like that. And so that's what we do with the hands. And then he said, well, what is excellence? What is beautiful excellence? And the answer that he gave dealt with the inner state of the person, the inner stage of the being. So that's the heart. So head and heart and hands is like the three kind of like areas of how a wisdom tradition, how Islam very specifically informs us about the different parts of who we are, to try to just be a good person completely. And what's interesting is that I wrote that was one of the last songs that I wrote on the album. And it was during Ramadan last year. It's about like Ramadan starts in just a couple of days. And so Ramadan last year, we have these like long nighttime prayers where you go and you stand with a group of people, and the imam throughout the course of the prayer recites a 30th of the Quran every day, so that by the end of Ramadan, you've listened to the entire Quran be recited in prayer at night, like with your neighbors, basically. It's really beautiful, and it takes it takes about an hour and some change, maybe an hour and a half, and so I'm standing there in prayer, and I've been thinking about this song, and I had been listening to the music and trying to figure out what am I going to write this, and what's this song about? And then it came to me while I'm standing there praying, and I'm trying to focus, and I couldn't focus on anything but the song. I wrote the whole song in my head during the course of the prayer, and then we got done, and I had to like run to my studio and get it down. So that was a special one.
So I have a backstory. When I was in 9th and 10th grade, I had this teacher named Sam who every morning, 10 minutes a day, we would write in our journals, just write no matter what. And we weren't allowed to stop writing. So like, let's say we got stuck on a word like the, we would have to write the, and keep going, and kind of this whole, this idea of like just getting our mind creative as we go. And I bring this story up because when I heard the track, Mysterious Things, that's kind of came to me, because it reminded me that I thought you either did this on one take, or it was just something you just started writing and then wrote one draft and that was it. Can you talk to me about that track and kind of the writing process behind it?
Well, I mean, that's a great writing practice. So one of the things that me and Brendan do at Travelers Media is we do an online month-long writing workshop, songwriting workshop, and that's one of the things that I really emphasize is like free writing. So setting a timer for ourselves and then just write. Like there's just got to be words coming onto the paper. They don't have to make any sense, but the pen or the keys or something has to be writing the entire time. So that's a practice that I really love. Yeah, so that song in particular was really about the fact that, even with, like I said, in what's the one called? And the message was love. Deep Cuts. That's one of the first ones I did when I got back to Minneapolis. Like, there's always love between us. But then, I was kind of the whole time I was there, I was dancing around the fact that there are people that I don't talk to anymore. And we used to be really close and we used to be in each other's lives. And now we're just not. That I was in Minneapolis for a full month doing that. And there are people that, were like family members to me. And like now I go to town and I don't even see them, And so just like, well, what is that, So that's a song for those people. And it just really is like, man, there's a lot going on inside a human being that would, and so just having grace with each other and having understanding that we're not always going to align. We might not understand the reason that people do the things they do, but to try to have a good opinion of people, even if if what they're doing or how they're approaching things isn't working for us, for me, like I said, if it's unhealthy, I know that that's at least half me, but I might just need to leave that be. Sometimes it needs to be that growth and adjustment. The hearts are never closed. They're just under construction. It's like, it's that like we're two very complicated beings trying to make sense of our own lives. And so the fact that we overlapped and shared this journey together for a long time, just because we're not doing that, just because we're not having like the miracle of love and friendship at this moment doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that we're enemies. It doesn't mean that it's a failure or something like that. I don't even necessarily call it a falling out. It's just like, we had a really beautiful kind of like miracle of overlap for however long, and it's not that right now. And I actually wrote that to a different piece of music. So it's interesting you say that, because that song took a couple different iterations to really to get it right.
It seems like a lot of your writing, when you're writing art, it's not obviously not just for the fans, but for yourself as well. And I imagine there's stuff you learn about yourself after you've completed a project. Is there a particular track record on this that you kind of went in thinking one way of yourself, and after you wrote it, you're like, wait, no, that's a totally different perspective of, or I'm learning something new about myself?
I would say this song, Handwriting, is where
that track.
Yeah, thank you. Like that one, I had a lot of pain and I would say a lot of disappointment around the time that I left Minneapolis, left Rhyme Sayers, left America, left the different communities that I was in. I felt really disillusioned and like let down by a lot of the communities that I was in, and this relationships and situations. Like it was a really tough time, and I felt really disillusioned by these situations that I felt like I had been pouring my entire self into. And I knew that there was a lot of pain, and I knew that there was like a radical detachment happening. I knew that to just get up and just leave the country, like I wasn't unaware of the fact that like this is kind of extreme, not that I'd ever doubted it was the right thing to do. I do think it was completely the right thing to do. But I also knew that like you can't just leave it like this. You have to go back. You've got to check back in. You can't just bounce and not. You got to still, circle back and close these gaps and have these conversations and heal from this stuff. And so when I went back to Minneapolis, I thought I was going to make an album about the process of being there and healing and working it out. But once I got back, I realized that like yet again, everything that I wanted had come true against all the odds. It didn't make sense on paper, but it's like that's happened in my life so many times. And I realized like in a lot of ways I have healed from this. Just the gratitude that I have for the fact that this worked out again. I'm back in Minneapolis. I did the independent thing, and I'm back here completely financing my own music. Me and Ant are still friends. I'm doing this on my terms. It just felt great, And so that was just a time that I realized that like, man, I've been given so much in my life that it's not that there aren't injustices. It's not that I don't feel wronged, because I do have a lot of, I think, righteous indignation or anger, about things that have happened to me and others. So, injustice to me is a really serious deal. But even with that being said and being so very true, the gratitude that I have for just the incredible gifts that have just been handed to me throughout my life. Not that I didn't have to work for them. Like I had to work for them. Like I said, I bled and literally had to fight and literally had to all of that stuff. But it's like I was given the gift of loving something enough that I would fight for it. Even the fighting was a gift. Even the hard work was a gift. Even the sacrifice was a gift. A lot of people, I don't know why they don't love it enough to really sacrifice for it. A lot of people want to do music or, do their creative thing for their career, and they just don't seem to put in the work. And like, I was given a deep enough and broad enough and undying love to the point where I will sacrifice for this thing. So I just have so much gratitude for the gifts I've been given that it just kind of overshadows and almost erases whatever anger or bitterness I might have.
And that's interesting because when I was listening to handwriting, and you spit, "I'm not a star. I'm the darkness in between. I'm in the darkness between them." So when I first heard that at the beginning of the second verse, I kind of thought, you're being very hard on yourself, right? But then you continue and you say the reason for being the glee and the grieving, and then to me that was just like, oh well, no, he's embracing it all. He's embracing the positive and the negative. And he's saying, and he's kind of acknowledging at the same time that we're all here with a purpose, and that was really kind of my takeaway from those lyrics.
Yeah, so that actually was it's a Sufi saying, like the stars and the darkness between them. That there's so much there that we focus on, but then there's so much in where we don't focus. So everyone looks at certain things. Our eyes are drawn to certain things, but there's so much in the things that we don't focus on. And so, yeah, embracing all of it, that it's all part of the journey. Every step, it's like the journey is about the outcome. And as long as we end at the right destination, then every step that got us there was the right step.
That's right. So one more question for you. As mentioned, you have a podcast, the Travelers Podcast with Brother Ali. What's the purpose of the podcast as an artist? What does it do for you that maybe music does not do for you?
It's just more connecting, it's just more expressing, more connecting. What I really wanted is to give people a window into the connections that I have with other people that also express themselves for a living, as that's what we do. So whether it's, spiritual teachers or artists or political organizers or educators or healers or, that we're all people that communicate. And that's what we do. It's who we are, But then there's plenty of times where it's just me talking. Like I'll talk for 2.5 hours and the numbers don't go down when I do that. I've gone long stretches. Like sometimes during Ramadan, all 4 weeks will just be me talking about what I'm experiencing. Also around October 7th, I did 4 weeks in a row of just me talking about the Palestinians and what this thing means in the kind of global Muslim diaspora,
How is that received?
Great. I mean, like I said, the numbers do not go down at all, and it's a great feeling. So it's just another way to be able to express and connect and, and this last tour that we did, we did VIP meet and greets before the show. So we got to talk to people, and we're going to do that again. The next leg of the tour is coming up with DJ Abilities DJing from me, which is really dope. JB is also going to be on that tour, and Merce is going to be at some of those shows. We're not announcing that till next week as of this recording. But, those VIP meet and greets, I get to actually talk to the real, very supportive, engaged, active fans, listeners. And so on this last tour was the first time I really got to do that since launching the podcast. And I just heard from, everybody on that, everybody in that group were really dedicated listeners to the podcast. So it was a really beautiful thing to be able to connect with them and just hear from them and meet the people that was wow, there are people that really love this podcast the way that they love the music. And I didn't know that until I got to talk to them.
It's so dope. The latest album is Satisfied Soul, produced by Ant from Atmosphere. Brother Ali, thank you so much for coming back to the Library Rap hip-hop interviews with Tim Heineke. I greatly appreciate your time and everything you do.
Thank you so much, man. It's great to talk to you again.
I bring stories of turmoil and glory. The toll stolen from me and gold laid before me. My heart got ripped and carved out of a ditch. Flooded it with wisdom when the rainstorm hit. I've been punched on, spit on, loved on, and kissed on, handcuffed, detained. Some chanted my name, but the globe's so spacious and the Lord's so gracious. Borders and walls won't contain us. My soul is a song that rose out of the cages. My story a poem that glows out of the pages. I feel it in my bones, down through the ages. Maybe the universe knows what my name is. They say I long for illogical things, but I've seen all my
Hay muchas cosas en la vida que deberían estar garantizadas, pero no lo están. Como cuando alguien te dice, ahorita voy, que realmente sea ahorita. También debería de estar garantizado que cuando tu suegra viene de visita, solo se quede unos días en tu casa y no para siempre. O que el bote de yogurt de verdad tenga yogurt y no sobras. Ojalá todo en la vida estuviera garantizado como AT&T. AT&T presenta la garantía AT&T. Conectividad con la que puedes contar, las ofertas que quieres y el servicio que mereces. O harán lo correcto. Esa es la garantía AT&T. Visita att.com/garantía para conocer más. AT&T. Conectar lo cambia todo. Aplican términos y condiciones. Visita att.com/garantía para más detalles.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.